We're going to unpack something that pretty much all of us have encountered, whether it's in ourselves or in the people we love. We're taking a real deep dive into the hidden psychology behind what looks like hyperindependence, but as you'll see, is actually something way more complex. We're exploring the psychology of silence, and specifically why asking for help is just so incredibly hard for some people. So think about this for a second. Have you ever seen someone who is just clearly drowning in stress? You know the type. They're completely overwhelmed, their plate is way too full, the water is basically rising up to their chin, and yet they absolutely refuse your help. You can literally see the exhaustion on their face, but they just push you away anyway. It's a confusing and honestly sometimes a really frustrating dynamic to witness, right? When you offer that lifeline, you usually just hit a brick wall of phrases like, I got it, or I'm okay. But what psychology tells us, and what's really interesting about this, is that this external behavior, these quick, kind of dismissive reassurances, often hide a super deep internal struggle. They'll tell you they're fine, even when they are demonstrably not. And the absolutely crucial thing to understand right out of the gate is that this isn't just about independence. Sometimes the mere act of asking for help actually feels harder and literally more painful than suffering completely alone. Crazy, right? Okay, section 1, wounds from the past. Let's dive right into the origins of this silence. You see, people don't just wake up one day and arbitrarily decide, hey, I'm never going to accept help ever again. To truly get this behavior, we have to look back at its historical and developmental roots. Self-reliance, in this specific context, is a habit formed when support wasn't guaranteed. It's a survival pattern, guys, not some built-in personality trait. For a lot of these folks, doing things entirely by themselves simply feels familiar. They learned pretty early on in life that support wasn't always coming when they were stressed out or in trouble. They looked around, realized nobody was riding into the rescue, and just decided they had to figure the whole shebang out on their own. Let's move along and see exactly how this builds into a lifelong pattern. In step 1, a person reaches out for help. Pretty standard. But in step 2, instead of getting comfort, they get dismissed. Maybe they were totally ignored when they needed support, or maybe they were even explicitly told they were just overreacting. And because of that, boom, we hit step 3. The brain actually learns that asking is downright unsafe. Their brain now automatically assumes that relying on others is fundamentally unreliable. Reaching out has taught them that it leads absolutely nowhere, so asking for help, it feels entirely unnatural to them now. Moving on to section 2, the heavy internal critic. Let's talk a bit about guilt and minimization. So once the brain has learned that the outside world is unreliable, this internal monologue takes over. It's this quiet but incredibly heavy voice that basically traps people in their own silence. Now, consciously, they might brush you off, saying out loud, oh, others have bigger problems, it's really not that serious. But secretly, the darker reality is what they feel inside. My struggles are an inconvenience. And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue. They secretly believe their issues are just too much, and they worry deeply that sharing them is just going to annoy or stress out the people around them. All of this results in a deep, deep fear of being a burden. So instead of opening up, they keep everything locked tightly inside, even when they desperately need support. Why? Well, because guilt stops them dead in their tracks. To this person, the heavy burden of suffering in silence actually feels less heavy and much safer than the intense guilt of feeling like a burden to you. Because they downplay their own pain and convince themselves their needs are small and invalid, asking for help just feels entirely unnecessary. Which brings us to section 3, hiding behind the mask, the fear of vulnerability. All of this internal guilt and past conditioning creates a situation where the person feels they have to present this extreme level of capability to the world. But here's the thing, this capability isn't just about getting things done. It's an active defense mechanism. Strength simply feels safer than vulnerability. I mean, think about it. For someone who is deeply used to being the strong one, the one who handles everything, the absolute rock for everyone else, admitting that something is hard feels like a terrifying loss of control. Showing struggle feels emotionally exposing in a way they just cannot tolerate. They don't want to look weak, so they keep the mask firmly in place. They stay quiet because projecting strength is literally the armor that keeps them safe from the perceived dangers of vulnerability. That leads us perfectly into section 4, the secret silent wish, what they actually want. So what's really happening under all that armor? What is the secret wish they will rarely, if ever, actually admit to you? Well, they secretly wish someone would notice. Just let that sink in for a second. This is the part most people completely miss. Despite the walls, despite the chorus of I'm okays, they do want help. They do want support. They just deeply, deeply wish that someone would notice their struggle on their own, without them having to ask for it. Because based on everything we've just covered, the past dismissal, the guilt, the fear of vulnerability, directly asking for help feels vastly more uncomfortable and dangerous than staying silent and just hoping you see them. And now, section 5, survival, not stubbornness. Let's reframe the behavior. So the crucial point here is that we really have to change the lens through which we view the people in our lives who refuse our help. On the outside, yeah, they look incredibly stubborn, but the inside reality, they're scared. Scared of being a burden, scared of being dismissed. Outside, they look fiercely independent, but inside, they're simply unused to receiving genuine, reliable support. And while they look like this impenetrable fortress of strength, the truth is they're just heavily guarded. What looks like stubbornness is actually an old, deeply ingrained survival pattern running on the inside. Which brings us to our final thought for today. If staying silent and doing it all alone is really just an old survival pattern, a relic from a time when support wasn't guaranteed, what would happen if we finally let the armor drop? What would happen if we recognized this pattern in our loved ones and offered support without making them ask? Or, hey, what if we recognized it in ourselves and dared to believe that depending on someone else might actually be safe this time? It's a pretty profound shift in perspective, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps you understand the hidden psychology of silence just a little bit better. Catch you next time.